Hello everyone, my name is Francesca Rubulotta. I'm an intensivist and anesthetist based in London, and I am honored to be the interim chair of the International Women in Critical Care Network. Except that the first face-to-face meeting might be done in my hometown, Catania in Italy. iWIN is a hub for initiatives addressing the issues surrounding gender equalities. We have core values, and those are ideal, meaning innovation, diversity, equality, advocacy, which includes education and leadership. And we like to promote leadership through examples and role models. The idea of iWIN grew over the years, starting almost 10 years ago, and in Vienna, in Paris, in Singapore, in the United States, we all together realized the need of network in a beautiful land and in a nice warm weather, which could allow us and our family to participate in the work of the conferences. We know that there are problems related to women at work, and we would like to explore those and to find solutions. The problem is not just limited to medicine. We see from finance experience that the way that women are treated at work is different, and even the way women are paid is less. That is very sad, and lots of questions are raised by this evidence. What is interesting is that there is no perceptible difference in the way that women behave at work compared to men, and yet there are differences in results. We believe the problems are due to barriers and very easy solvable biases. We want to shape the system so that we can create opportunities for everyone. We want talent to excel and then give opportunities to everyone. Goals. So iWIN is creating positive culture, allowing women and minorities to feel welcome. We don't want women to feel as they are a problem to society, but we want to focus on solutions that can improve everyone's life. So I think that iWIN is an inspirational initiative. I'm very honored to be part of it. And I think, and we all believe that it's only crazy until we don't do it. Potentially people can think just do nothing because to reach your dream is impossible, but our vision is that we want just to do it because nothing is impossible. We are not able to do the face-to-face conference this year, unfortunately, because traveling is very complex, but we don't want to miss the opportunity to talk and to express our beliefs. We have this webinar today. The topic are leadership, innovation and support. Leadership that is proposed by role models and inspirational figures that will present today. Innovation that during this pandemic has been really enhanced and grown, and support, because we need to realize that 70% of healthcare professionals at the bedside during this pandemic were women, and it's important for them to show support and to help them going back to their family and normal life. We have a different vision. The face-to-face meeting was revolutionary because it was family-oriented. We proposed childcare. We propose non-medical education, networking events, not late at night, workshop and leadership, as we said, by role models. The webinars is also innovative. We have equal representation of male and female, equal representation of minorities. We cover all age, is free and is endorsed international by several organizations. We invite you, and we hope you will enjoy that today. At the same time, we invite you to join our face-to-face meeting on the 24th of June 2021 in Catania. These are my contacts. Enjoy the webinar.
So welcome everybody. Welcome to this modified version of what iWIN thought we were going to be this time. Rather than being in Sicily, we're still sheltering at home and many of us not traveling. I'm going to share a bit of a journey, but more a bit of some framework of what I see leadership evolving to and how my leadership courses have shaped my leadership activity. I often use Nelson Mandela as an example of a great leader. And this quote from one of my leadership teachers says it's the collective capacity, so it's not an individual, but a group to work together for a common purpose. And really within healthcare, and indeed within critical care, it's the health and the wellness of those we care for in the ICU. Nelson Mandela was known for, despite being captive for a period of time, was still able to generate knowledge and become a great leader and influence others. He was all about the all of the people surrounding him. This figure's a little different, but it illustrates just what we think it takes to be a leader, particularly with how our world is changing these days, the complexity of the healthcare system, how everything's in flux. The individual needs to work within this loop or stream of the social influences in our life, as well as the structural things that are surrounding us. And we could use any example but you can think of, but in midst of COVID, all of the social political influences that determine how we're behaving, our structural capacity, what we have in one part of the world may not be the same. And this concept comes from some of my more recent healthcare leadership instructors, a group called the Blue Dot Strategy, but it's been one that I found very useful going forward. The other concept is, as health professionals, it's not just that we're professional, but it's an attribute to which we need to be able to attain. It's what hopefully others apply to you in terms of your ethics, your accountability, your integrity, and the values that you hold. And as you build and grow in leadership, these are the sorts of attributes that are required to be a strong and modern leader. I mentioned this book called Bringing Leadership to Life in Care, Leads in a Caring Environment was really the first book that was published by a group in Canada, in British Columbia, on healthcare leadership. And it's a framework that's used within the Canadian healthcare system, but has been replicated in Australia and other parts of the world. And really that acronym LEADS has 5 tenets to it. And we're going to walk our way through each of those and figure out and discuss, hopefully, how each of those might be applied to your own leadership journey. The first is leading ourselves, and it's becoming clear, particularly with more women in leadership, that self-awareness and these core leadership values of how you impact an organization, how you communicate, how you influence, and how you learn are really important. Underneath all of this, I don't know how many amongst you actually practice mindfulness, but I'm really, really fortunate to grow in an organization that has made mindfulness integral to how we practice. I can go into a leadership meeting and with the VP of our hospital, our CEO, and have a 5-minute mindfulness activity before we start any discussion about what's happening in our hospital. It helps to focus, it helps you to make aware of what's going on, and it probably gives us a bit of emotional balance when things are crazy. I will tell you, in the midst of COVID, those touch points where we had an opportunity to debrief amongst the leadership of the hospital and practice a bit of mindfulness were actually the things that got me through the past 100+ days. The other thing that's come from the Blue Dot Strategy are some of those values as a leader. And you may not think of these as necessarily things that are important for leadership, but I will tell you, as I've gone through this journey, I really have learned a lot about these things. The first is courage. leadership requires one to be courageous, to really connect individuals to, for me, an introvert, somewhat shy, standing up and being courageous to say when things are not working the right direction, to be curious. Many of us come from an academic background, but even if you don't, curiosity, I think, is what's driven us into healthcare, particularly in critical care, because we're just curious about how we can make people better when pathophysiology is disrupted. To be creative. I spent a long time in this leadership course in the past year actually doing things that I didn't think I was very talented at. I'm not much of an artsy, but building things with Lego, amongst other things, was just testing our creative images. And finally, working and sustaining our compassion. We know as this pandemic has spread out, compassion fatigue amongst intensivists has been a huge issue, and really working at that perimeter of flux and complexity, that's often been stretched. At the same time, we also know that intensivists are also resilient, and it's balancing that compassion and resilience in the middle of crises. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing is really, how do you engage others to achieve something? And it's not about us. It's about fostering the development of others. It's contributing to a healthy organization, not necessarily being that individual who's always saying the negative things, but and getting down that spiral where nothing's working, we can't make this better, but really communicating and saying, well, yeah, maybe this isn't working, but what could we do different? How could we make sense of what's happening? And then really thinking about how you build a team. The other concept is one of sense making. And sense making is just using that attribute of curiosity. This table gives you things in the midst of disorder. Things can be complicated, they can be chaotic, in fact, as I've been recently. But how do you make sense of all of those, and how do you respond in novel ways? It's a concept that I sometimes find challenging, but reflecting on how I make sense of when things aren't going often sets me in a new direction. So what's the goal of leadership? Really to achieve results. This comes out of the LEADS program again. It looks a bit like a PDSA cycle, doesn't it? Where you sort of figure out what the problem is, you set and align the values, you take action, and you reassess and reevaluate that. And so that PDSA cycle can be applied no matter whatever you're doing in leadership, including the activities and the projects you may want a team to do. And finally, really this focus that it's not on us as individual leaders, but that it really is about the team. There is no I in team at all. How do you build and achieve those results? Well, you need to build partners and organizations. And what we're trying to do within iWIN is start to connect groups of women and partners within our intensive care colleagues who can really develop a network that we believe is going to be committed to the improvement of us as women in healthcare, particularly in critical care, to take some of the knowledge that we've been generate, move it, and navigate what for many of us around the world has been a rather challenging social political environment. Whether you're leadership within your hospital, whether you're hoping to be a leader in a professional organization, it's how to navigate those. What is a coalition to do that? It really is this diverse group, and it can be individuals or organizations, but working towards that common goal. I put an example down there of the UK Sepsis Trust as a model of a group that's built a coalition. And in that coalition, we often find that that group has done a lot for moving the bar in terms of sepsis. I love this figure. It really is telling you that you can put a whole lot of luggage and a whole lot of people on a truck to get where you need to go. Those coalitions have a common destination, they share values, they share the work to get that pile built. They share the credit. It's not a single individual taking that credit, but they also share the risk and responsibility. I work within the Canadian Critical Care Trials Group, and certainly as a coalition, that group has generated knowledge. And I would say from a role modeling, you know, we've had women like Deborah Cook and others within that organization who've been strong women leaders in critical care and who've moved the bar forward for critical care research around the world. And finally, how do you transform a system? Well, this quote by Einstein that any intelligent fool can make things bigger and more complex. It's the courage to move it in an opposite direction and trying to simplify things. But successful leaders, I would suggest, demonstrate critical thinking ability. They encourage and support innovation. I'd be curious as we move through this small webinar today, just to learn about the innovation that's come out of all of the recent crises that we've had. How are we going to use that innovation to look strategically to the future, and what others have been doing to champion and orchestrate change within their organization? So how do we get to being an effective leader in all this system? You know, with change and everything else, with our resilience being stretched to the limits, you know, we all know leaders out there in the world who probably function down at this level. You know, they blame, they attack. They're more about themselves and less about the greater good. At the same time, this is coming back to Nelson Mandela. We know that there is this chasm that needs to be jumped to modern leaders where they're in it for the greater good, where they're co-creating, they're nurturing, they're supporting, and they're constantly evolving to be better. The challenge is getting an organization to that stage. On the right-hand side here is something that is called the enterprise solution for high reliability organizations. It's a concept that's being applied not only to industry, but to healthcare as well. And it has four different values, one of which is the cultural enablers. As a leader, we really need to think about how we lead and being humble in that and respecting individuals. At the same time, we need to continuously improve the work that we're doing so that we're getting to, I don't like the word perfection so much, but certainly to excellence. Thinking systematically about proving that system and ultimately coming back to the customer, in this case, who our patients are and how we improve that system. This is a framework that we're trying to apply in our hospital, and it involves a lot of going out to the unit and looking and seeing what's happening. Finally, some concepts about this advanced leadership in healthcare. This comes actually from my professional college, educational college in Canada, LEADS, and the LEADS program is part of CanMeds. And I just highlight two competencies within the LEADS framework here. One is demonstrating leadership in professional practice, and one is managing your practice. And the competencies that are important, I think, as we talk about women in critical care is providing mentorship and indeed sponsorship, which is something that the college didn't highlight, to guide and develop the leadership skills of others. And part of my purpose for speaking today is to start having those discussions about and coaching people to leadership positions. But finally, adjusting your priorities. We live in a busy world, but how do you as women contribute to our profession, both at your institutional level, within your national, or indeed internationally, to move the practice forward? So finishing up here, I just got some thoughts as we all stay at home. I certainly hope this storm is not going to last forever. You know, we're in a rapidly changing environment. The speed at which things have happened over the past 100+ days has been ridiculous. You know, can't fight it. need to figure out how we're going to move forward. And finally, you know, when all is rough, a big deep breath and an exhalation. And just a refocusing is what's going to get us through that. And with that, let's open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you very much for a kind invitation. I will discuss a little bit the gender leadership in anesthesiology and critical care. No conflict of interest related to this lecture. This is a picture, the 1603, the anatomical theater. What are you missing here? There are no women among doctors. So woman in anesthesiology and critical care and medicine represents innovation, growing, and progress. And this was well pointed out in a recent article on the Lancet, discussing the advancing women in science, medicine, and global health. And this is Professor Edith Matteau, Chair of Division of Anesthesia, Pain and Critical Care at Tel Aviv Medical Center, Israel. And I share with them many of these slides coming from a survey from the European Society of Anesthesiology, investigating the role of women in anesthesiology and critical care. The role of women in anesthesiology and critical care is very well defined. This is when we signed the Helsinki Declaration for Patient Safety in Anesthesiology with Professor Jannike Mellin-Olsen and Professor Van Haken some years ago in Helsinki. And this is at the National Italian Society, the last meeting in Rome in October 2019, where we celebrated the role of women in anesthesiology and critical care at the cloud. This is the gender distribution and residence among members of the Italian Society of Anesthesiology and Critical Care. In the Italian Society, we have more than 8,000 members, and almost 54–55% of them are women. More importantly, among members below 40 years, 60% are women, and among residents, 60% are women. So as you can see here, in the Italian Society, women are very well represented and are the majority in the overall society members, and more importantly, in the younger members of the society. According to the OECD Health Statistics 2015, you can see that the gender composition of doctors is changing, and the share of female doctors steadily increases in all OECD countries. On average, the share of female doctors was 29% in 1990, 38% in 2000, 46% in 2015. And as you can see, the highest amount of female coming in the medical field is in the Netherlands, Spain, Norway, Belgium, Iceland, and Italy. Further, you can see when you look at the gender management and leadership gap in academic healthcare centers in Europe, recent data suggest that very few of them, however, cover a position as full professor, 30% as senior doctors in the hospital, this is at least in Germany, 20% as full professor and 40% as senior doctors in the hospital in Sweden, 22% and 35% as full professor and senior doctors accordingly in UK, and in Austria around 20% as full professor. So around 25 to 40% females as full professor in university or senior doctors in hospital. When we look at the increasing of the role of females as department chair or covering institutional positioning in the hospital, you see that it will take at least 50 years to reach gender parity, unless the rate of change will accelerate. And Professor De Hart, the president of the European Society of Anesthesiology, launched an important program to promote gender parity and the role of women in the leadership and management in anesthesiology and critical care. And several initiatives has been launched by the society. In a recent survey among its members, what was found was that there were almost equal numbers among men and women involved in clinical or basic research. However, when we look at the public representation, there were striking differences between men and women. As you can see here, the lecturing at the national meeting, men are almost 70%. Lecturing at the international meeting, men are around 20%. And in various scientific and other committees, men represent at least 30%. This is always double the representation for women. So women are clearly underrepresented in the public representation. But what is holding women back from leadership roles in medicine? So it's a question of coming from medical students and the role of physicians. It's a question about the role of leadership and management position, or is a mentality issue within women. So this is a survey led by Professor Idil Matteau at the European Society of Anesthesiology in 2018. We see in a large number of subjects, almost equally divided between male and female. And the question is, do women wish to be really in the leading position? And what are their perceived career barriers? This is extremely important to develop evidence-based intervention designed to possibly close the gender gap. If you look at the demographics and you ask to women, you can see here that in a hospital with more than 500 beds, the women work at least around 63%. But the wish for leader career among women is only 48%. Chair, position as chair, in female role is only 33%. And the age of women less than 45 in the anesthesiology and critical care units is more than 65%. Interestingly, 57% of women have children, and at least they have at least more than 2 per family. So among men, they have again around 60% in hospital, 500 beds hospital. The wish for leader career is around 48%, like women here. Chair female is only 15%. When you ask to men, the age is less than 45, only 50%, so older than women, mostly non-residents, and 73% of children with around 2.3 each. So if you look at this data, male compared to female are older, more with partner and children, and more chaired by male. So do women aim at leadership position? If you ask in general, the women answer that the majority, they don't wish a leadership position, or this is a less percentage as compared to men. And what are the obstacles to career development for women that are considered? Mainly general issues, so missing research background, lack of leadership education, missing female role model, family level, so lack for part-time opportunity, lack of affordable childcare, partners' career consideration, and responsibility for raising the children, and at a personal level, so missing self-confidence and less clinical time. So it's very important an organizational and institutional culture and relational interaction with staff members. Which are the perceived obstacles to academic leadership among women? It is not about the lack of spouse support, because more than 80% are happy. It's not about career development of spouse, among 70%. Why you don't be in the leadership? This is the answer from women. It's about for more workload and less personal time in almost 84% of the case, responsibility to take care of children, 65, lack of part-time opportunities, 67, lack of comprehensive and affordable childcare in 55%. And we would rather spend more time with patients in 58%. If you compare the answer from male and female, we have striking difference. You see that if you ask why women have more problem in terms of leadership, you see that women really recognize more frequently compared to men the problem of less personal time and workload, responsibility to take care of children, lack of part-time opportunities, and lack of comprehension and affordable childcare, as well as the time spent with patients. If you look at the millennials, you have even more issues to be under discussion. The tech savvy, the crave feedback and guidance, and the team workers, since they believe that no person have left behind generation. More importantly, they trade high pay for fewer billable hours, the flexible schedules, and a better work-life balance. But more importantly, for millennials, it's important to prioritize family over work. So if you look at the career barriers, is very well recognized and is even more recognized by men as compared to women. A lack of leadership in education, a lack of research background, a missing self-confidence, and a missing female role model. So the strategic approach that has been suggested to really examine gender diversity by tracking data, report the results, as the European Society of Anesthesiology tried to do, to investigate causes, to implement strategy to improve inclusion in the position of leadership and management, tracking outcomes and reporting results again. So the real solution is that women with more self-confidence in terms of role as leadership and management, more leadership possibilities in part-time jobs, which are clearly asked by women, support of leadership by department chair, which is extremely important, time for leadership engagement, education, coaching, and/or mentoring program, child care direct at hospital also at night and in weekends in order to better and optimize family and work. More importantly, the support from hospital and university management play a key role. So, human medicine is a human evolution coming from history to her history. The women must be really convinced themselves to write their own history in medicine. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here in this first webinar of iWIN. Thank you very much for inviting me. And my name is Luis Blanc. I am intensivist, and nowadays I am the director of research and innovation in my hospital. So my talk today will be a little bit opportunities for innovation, and I will do some examples that we did in my institution. So this is my conflict of interest for this. I am inventor of a US patent, a system to detect, to monitor parameters from medical devices, and I am also founder of this startup of my institution. I would like to start with this first slide showing that what will be, I mean, the hospital of the future, not only critical care, the hospital of the future. And as you will see here, it's plenty of new, I mean, jobs, initiatives, disciplines that will configure that hospital. And this is fully in agreement exactly of the hospital that we need after, in that case, the COVID pandemic. This is going to change many, many things. So if we see that the future is big data, sensors, I mean, augmented virtual reality, 3D, additive manufacturing, everything in the cloud, new disciplines, Internet of Things, system integrations, I will specifically comment on those three. System integrations to deal with these pandemics, cloud computing, and also additive manufacturing. Having said that, I use this classical picture to see what we are facing. Now we had still in some countries the first wave with all the problems and deaths. Then that will be a little bit the post-ICU recovery. Now we face new problems. Then the third wave will be what happened with our, in that case, people, patients that we care with chronic conditions and all people. And in the fourth wave, will be very important, which how we will face the problems of these patients, how we will face hospital organizations, the burnout of the people, and also the economic injury of that. This is very interesting thinking of these people saying that the 10 things I wish I had known some months ago. So, of course, we know too little about personal protective equipment and ICU beds, and this is challenging for the future. Too much about emails and communications and many non-essential information related with COVID-19, evolving insights related with the disease. This is totally a new disease, and in particular, I will speak about mechanical ventilation and then post-ICU care. Post-ICU care, seeing what will be ICU in the future. And probably we will move from ICU to the totally monitored hospital. This is some data. This is my region, Catalonia. Catalonia, 7.5 million people. And this is patients admitted for COVID and patients of other processes. We completely changed this population. This is a major challenge. And then just a few on non-invasive mechanical ventilation, and suddenly in early May we had this peaking on patients, in that case on invasive mechanical ventilation, together with this peaking in patients, in that case in the ICU. So this is a big challenge because we changed the category of the patient, and also we increased dramatically the number of patients up to a point of almost run out of ventilators. Talking about what we face in my institution, we face problems of monitoring. And this is very well described here, since these patients are isolated. I mean, not quite often nurses and physicians can get in. Those guys just move outside of the room, this monitorization, in that case of the mechanical ventilation. They said that having this, you can see these cables here going through the door. The patient is isolated and they can control a little bit more, I mean, the mechanical ventilation, to adjust settings and to ensure lung protective ventilation and so on. So monitoring control of that patient is a problem. I participate in the past in this layer of controlling information coming from departmentals of ICU. In that case, this came, I mean, from centricity, but can come from any other, which is a layer that allows a minimum data sets, quality metrics in order to get information. In the time where we need to know what's going on during the pandemic and really to examine what has been, I mean, happened during the pandemic, this kind of systems, of monitoring systems to get all the data, it's important. We went a step further. Since we developed this suite of connectivity or platform of connectivity, which is agnostic, it connects any medical device around the patient, monitor, ventilator, or whatsoever. I mean, using that during the pandemic, what we had is some kind of remote monitoring. In any place, we built another ICU, not only in one day hospitals, but in new buildings that we build an ICU. I mean, we build new monitoring. Of course, we can get, I mean, some data stored some kind of information thereafter, and being all this connected to the hospital information systems. This is the ICU that we built in my institution. This is the 5th ICU. We had the 2 normal ICUs, then another 2 that we built, and then we built that ICU because we ran out of beds, we ran out of, in that case, monitors and ventilators, and we construct that. And for monitoring these patients here, this is an open ICU, we created these big screens connected, in that case, with this connectivity platform. And then we had all this monitoring here, and all this goes to the hospital information system. So, and also we have habilitated some kind of communication of this information system at home. This is personal computer of one of the professionals in the ICU that can see not only, EKG, hemodynamics, mechanical ventilator waveforms, and everything at home. And we did that, in that case, in 10 days. Why that? During a pandemic, innovation, if the hospitals are used to do innovation, what they do is they are really fast when they need to use all data skills in order, to foster patients during this pandemic time. So now just a word on mechanical ventilators. We were really worried because up to a point to do not have any type of ventilator to ventilate the patients. And here you have a graph of total mechanical ventilators in the Catalan hospitals, as a function of the occupied ventilators. And also we had some number, in general, of ventilators. But despite of that, suddenly with a team of different engineers and different physicians, pneumologists, ICU physicians, and so, we try to create a very simple ventilator in order, if we get the point where the green overpasses the blue, then this type of machines, which is just machines, is a volume control, nothing else machine, can support patients. This is exactly what we did in that case in 12 days together with some, technologic center. This simulates a hand that compresses an emboot. There are sensors here, in that case for flow, for pressure. There are alarms also for pressure. And now you will see how this go, this in a patient. This is my team and myself in the ICU. Here is the patient and the ventilator. And here is an example. This patient is not paralyzed, is experimenting a kind of reverse triggering, not double cycling. That's why, it tolerates this kind of ventilation. So, but this is a situation only if we run out, any other ventilator which has been evaluated, which has been, in that case, pass all the processes in that case of evaluation, then we can use this type of machine. So we were prepared for that. Fortunately, we don't need, the use of that ventilators. And again, if an institution, it's is used to do innovation, we discovered that in that pandemic, we ran out of simple things. Simple things means that flow meters, means, connectors, means wires, means, dishevables, all kind of different pieces. We have in my institution a 3D lab for prosthetic devices in trauma, in orthopedics. So we put that 3D lab completely to work, to provide this type of pieces that we run out. And then not only we provide, this type of 3D additive manufacturing pieces for my institution, but also, for other 33 health centers. So we produce almost 20,000 items that with together 60 companies and 10 technologic centers in order to distribute this. And this is a graph, this is in blue, the pandemic, you will see here, in that case, detected cases, here the related deaths in blue, and this in gray and the shadow is the web visits of what we were doing, and in red, when we start to distributing all these pieces up to a point of the 20,000. That's why if you in your institution used to have an organization that fosters innovation, that tells what innovation means together with investigation. In that case, we can very easily develop, all kind of solutions in this type of crisis and pandemics. And that's it of my talk. And I would like to end with this slide. That was published in JAMA almost 10 years ago. But she's a lady, a young lady. She's very happy because, she succeeded in that case, sepsis. She survived a sepsis, and the family is also very happy. And now we are facing a technological world. We are facing a technological hospital. And we need to be really, really, really cautious and to care, because this young lady see the physician, as just, on the computer, playing on the computer without, seeing probably him or her, as an humanized person, that is at the bedside. So we are going to a complete technological and monitored hospital, but we must take care of all the humanities in the patients before, during, and after the pandemics. And maybe this will not come back again, but if it comes back, we must be with lots of humanity. So thank you very much for your attention.
Good morning. I'm Hannah Nobleza from the University of Mississippi Medical Center. I'm presenting also on behalf of Marion Darcy from University of Wisconsin Hospitals and Clinics. Thank you, iWIN, for this opportunity to present the stories that we receive from all over the world, representing leadership, innovation, and support for this webinar. Let's start with leadership. This study was born out of a women neurointensivist chat group when they started discussing ways to collaborate to prepare for the onslaught of COVID-19 patients with neurologic dysfunction. Dr. Sherry Cho took the lead and offered to design these studies for those willing to do this while being on the front line battling COVID-19. This initiative led to the GCS NeuroCovid study, as how it is now known. 1 week after its inception, over 50 sites registered, and currently there are now close to 199 sites. The consortium was also recently invited to be a member of the WHO Brain Initiative Forum on neurologic impacts of COVID-19. Another example of leadership is the creation of the ECMO program in Bangalore, India by Dr. Haji from Aster CMI Hospital. Dr. Haji is an experienced anesthetist with special interest in solid organ transplant and was inspired by her experience in ECMO in Singapore when she worked with Doctors McLaren and Ramanathan. Given the challenges and constraints in India with starting an ECMO program, she worked diligently for 2 years and eventually established their ECMO program as how it is functioning today. She credits her multidisciplinary team for its success, and as their outcomes are considered at par with ELSO, and probably they're one of the few centers that do awake ECMO and active mobilization in ECMO. Next slide, shared by one of the leaders of neurocritical care, Dr. Lori Shutter, shows how she initiated the first educational program dedicated to establishing a pipeline of emergency medicine residents mentored and trained in neurocritical care. This program started the path of critical care medicine for emergency medicine trained physicians during a time when critical care training and certification was limited for them. This was a good example of an innovative program that required leadership skills to see it through, and it ultimately provided support to trainees interested in critical care. Another story of firsts is Dr. Chandis's story in leadership, which started with her struggles as a first female fellow with a small child at Johns Hopkins. It even became part of an inspiration of a book. Her experiences inspired her to help others who were in a similar position. She built the first neuro ICU in Ohio State University, and when she accepted that position, she was actually a single mother and experienced associated difficulties with it, in addition to challenges of being a woman in that job. Now, as the current chair of the Neurocritical Care Society Women in Neurocritical Care section, or WINC, she made sure to promote a supportive and diverse environment. One of her main projects is seen here, the NCS Kids Space, which was the first in-house childcare of the Neurocritical Care Society annual meeting. One of our stories come from New York, one of the heaviest hit states by the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Deliach led her team in Mount Sinai to leverage their pre-existing programs to provide excellent care for both COVID-19 and non-COVID-19 patients alike. She led her team in the transformation of their state-of-the-art neuro ICU into a COVID-19 ICU. Her team has been active in collaborative research as well as outreach through social media and multiple webinars that they have been a part of. She shared that her core values seen here were what she used to lead and uplift her team every day. We now proceed with examples of innovation. Here we can see the different examples of innovative equipment created from across the world. On your upper left is an example of an intubation box. Beside that is new mask developed from Stanford University, which is an innovation on PPE. On the lower left is a 3D reconstructed component for face shields produced in Kenya. In the Philippines, several fashion designers listened to the call of healthcare workers and started producing protective suits. In Massachusetts, the Be Protected booth was created by a team to decrease utilization of PPE use for healthcare workers doing testing. Some innovations involving patient care include using MRI extension tubings to be able to bring poles outside the ICU room to conserve PPEs, systematic sterilization of PPEs, and there's more research into mass producing ventilators. You can see that here we have ICU robots being utilized for communication, and apps are being developed for case finding and monitoring, and drive-through testing sites were started to be used worldwide. In terms of education, there was an increase in use of simulation for education, as well as virtual simulation softwares. Conferences also started to convert into the virtual platforms. Due to the pandemic, an overwhelming number of research collaboration, manuscripts produced, and grant funding have also been made available to different sectors of the community. In terms of support, here you can see several organizations and societies offering these free courses to support the healthcare workers that manage COVID-19 patients. Whether they are intensivists or non-intensivists, these courses have been offered for free. Another example of support was sent to us by Geraldine Rivera from Puerto Rico, and she showcased a resilience workshop for personnel managing COVID-19 patients. As soon as they had their first COVID-19 patient, Geraldine jumped into action and created an innovative resilience workshop utilizing various techniques such as meditation and music therapy to support the staff working at the Respiratory Isolation Unit, ICU. It was held every Tuesday for 1 hour, and as of today, none of the staff working in the RIU ICU has been referred to professional support services. And last week, phase 2 was started, and eventually her goal is to expand this project to the RIU ward staff as well. The Neuro Heroes initiative started out as a way to provide moral support for frontline New York neuro ICU healthcare workers in the form of food bought from local restaurants and vendors donated by several people around the nation. From this initiative, this expanded to support other hotspots, including Washington, California, and other states, after surpassing its goal of $1,000 and raising $30,000 to date. More than 55 deliveries have been done to ICUs around the United States. Next is an initiative started by Dia Sharma, an undergrad student at University of Washington in Seattle, when she was 16 years old, and the initiative is called We Care. She shared that her passion was for women's rights and specifically women's education. She founded We Care during her high school with the goal of facilitating women's education opportunities by collaborating with registered nonprofits and spreading awareness in their communities regarding women's rights, equality, equity in education. Through this initiative, Dia's team have supported the Virni Project's College Initiative and the Saharas Education Digital Literacy Program. They collaborate with local businesses and hold annual charitable banquets, which raises nearly 75% of their donations. With this, I would like to end my presentation and give our thanks to the iWIN organizers and executive team for the opportunity to share these stories from around the world. We would also like to invite you to share your stories through our blog site, www.bridgingtheicugap.com. And we welcome any stories from women and their allies working in ICUs around the world. Thank you and have a good day.
Okay, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Geeta Mehta and I work at the University of Toronto, and I am going to speak to you today about how to support women, and my title is 10 Tips to Support Women in Academia. I think all of you recognize that women are underrepresented in all spheres of scholarly activities in academic medicine, and that includes leadership roles, full professorships. There is a wage gap. They are less likely to be nominated and receive awards. They're less likely to be invited to speak at grand rounds and at conferences. They're less likely to participate in clinical practice guidelines, task forces, and as journal reviewers. And this has significant implications for women, of course, because all of these activities are desired by women and important for their advancement. We all know that diversity is important. Scholarly activities and scholarly productivity is greater when there is a gender diverse and overall diverse contribution, because perspectives of people from all over the world, different professions, contribute to better science. And as I mentioned, exclusion of women hurts their academic productivity and slows down the progression of their careers. Recognizing that we all need to support women to help them succeed, Anna Jaja, another physician from the University of Toronto, and I wrote a paper on 10 strategies to use every day. And I will be speaking further about some of these, and I've added some others as well. But just briefly, be aware of your implicit bias. Everyone should speak up about inequities, particularly men. Check your gender stereotypes. Amplify women's voices. Be a mentor and be a sponsor. Use women's professional titles. Consciously aim to achieve gender balance. Nominate women for opportunities, support women trainees, and ensure that scholarly activities are family friendly. And I'm going to talk more about these. If you're in a leadership role, then it's very important that you be a role model and that you represent women and other underrepresented minorities on a daily basis. Don't minimize, dismiss, or ignore inequities. Take implicit bias training and ask the people that work with you to also do that. Have regular departmental meetings where you would address issues regarding bias or harassment. Invite feedback on the culture of your group. Have a complete non-tolerance for harassment and unprofessionalism. Nominate and propose the women who work under you for opportunities. And we all know that women are more likely to volunteer to organize parties and buy the baby shower gift, but make sure these responsibilities are distributed fairly amongst men and women. Don't convene manels. In 2016, the Sepsis 3 guideline document was published, which is a useful document for people around the world. Many noted that all of the authors, 19, were men. There was no representation of allied health. There was no representation from low and middle income countries, and all but one of the authors were white. There are other guideline panels and task forces that also lack women. And in this study of 10 guidelines, the representation of female physicians ranged from 0 in many of them to 16%. So it seems to be a common issue. Based on the Sepsis 3 document, I and many other engaged authors around the world, men and women, interprofessional, interdisciplinary, produced a perspective that was published in the Blue Journal. And this perspective was endorsed by 15 societies around the world. And it presented a review of the empirical evidence on better science and more applicable guidelines produced by diverse groups. Within the document, we suggested 5 feasible strategies to reduce gender disparity. That included the establishment of diversity policies for panels such as this one, that explicit reporting of the principles and methods of panel composition be mandatory, that the metrics of women's representation on panels for definition documents, consensus statements, and practice guidelines be published, that explicit gender parity policies be incorporated into all areas of academic critical care, and that training on diversity and unconscious bias be mandatory for all critical care academics, particularly those in leadership roles. We identified that women are underrepresented at 5 critical care international conferences. At the bottom, the European Society, the Brussels Conference, Society of Critical Care Medicine, our Canadian Congress, and the UK Intensive Care Society meeting. And between 2010 and 2016, the overall representation of speakers that were female physicians ranged from 7% to 18%. The Society of Critical Care Medicine showed improvements over time, as did the UK Intensive Care Society, but the other congresses did not. So don't exclude women as speakers, faculty, or plenary speakers, which means measuring and having a target and meeting that quota. And if you don't meet the quota, find other women. There are studies that have shown that if women are including on convening committees, the likelihood of having more women as speakers increases. Don't agree to be a participant on a panel or an all-male panel. And we've all seen examples of this, including these ridiculous ones, Women in Math, which had to be canceled because of an outcry. If you're invited to be on an all-male panel, decline and explain why you're declining, and suggest a few women to take your place. And we have wonderful male colleagues around the world who have publicly declared on social media not to participate in panels. Not having women or underrepresented minorities on panels suggests that their voices are not important. Women have been underrepresented as grand round speakers, and this was one study from an American university that showed that the percentage of intramural speakers and extramural speakers at grand rounds was 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 women. And we all know that extramural speaking opportunities are highly prestigious. They often come with an honorarium, a trip to another city. They're good for our careers. Because we're introduced to potential mentors and mentees. When the number of these speakers was normalized to the workforce, the representation was about 50% of medical students, same for residents, and about 60% of faculty. So do invite qualified women as intramural and extramural speakers. Have a system, for example, alternating years of woman versus man, and elicit suggestions from your diverse committee. Many scholarly activities are scheduled early in the morning and after work, and that's understandable so that they don't interfere with clinical activities. However, this kind of scheduling excludes both men and women who have obligations at home, whether this be young families more commonly or elderly parents. So having a policy, for example, this Brown University memo, whereby family-friendly scheduling is used for scholarly activities so that women and men with young families are not excluded, improves our ability to participate. The Canadian Institute for Health Research is our national funding body. And last year, these data were published showing that women are much more likely to be funded. And when they are funded, they receive lower amounts. And this is not just a Canadian issue, it's an international issue. So when you are asked to sit on a grant review committee, do evaluate the science, do evaluate the scientist in terms of their productivity, but don't take into consideration the sex of the scientist. Mentorship and sponsorship are both very important. Mentorship shows women doors. Mentorship is essential for the success of an individual. Sponsorship is different. Sponsorship, the meaning of it is for a more experienced and advanced individual who has a large circle or network to introduce women, young women, into that network and to promote these women for specific opportunities. And sponsorship has been shown to increase women's participation in scholarly activities and improve their research and academic success. Don't impose gendered behavioral expectations. Agentic and communal characteristics are a set of characteristics that have been associated with men and women. And agentic characteristics include assertiveness, aggressiveness, ambition, competition, independence, and being outspoken. Communal characteristics have been traditionally associated with women: nurturing, kind, sympathetic, sensitive, agreeable, warm, and caring. And we all have biases regarding this behavior. And we expect and assume that leaders should have agentic characteristics and that women should have more communal, maternal, nurturing characteristics. However, when women leaders show these agentic characteristics, they pay a social penalty. They are criticized. They are seen as less warm. And when women exhibit the more feminine communal characteristics, they're actually criticized because they're not seen as competent as men. And there was this Harvard Business Review article called The Double Bind: damned if you do, damned if you don't. So don't impose gendered behavioral expectations. Be aware of these biases and always remember that what's okay for a man is okay for a woman. Women are interrupted much more often, including during the Trump and Clinton debates. Trump interrupted Clinton 51 times, and she interrupted 17 times. Supreme Court judges who are women are also more likely to be interrupted than men. We've all been in situations where a woman has presented an idea which has not been acknowledged, and several minutes later, a man presents the same idea, and he is accoladed for that. Use statements such as, why don't we let her finish her thought? Or statements such as, I think Arti suggested that several minutes ago. Arti, why don't you expand on that? Don't be a passive bystander when you witness bias, harassment, innuendos, or any kind of gendered statements. Do be an active bystander. And there's a nice article from Vox Climatis published in 2019, which actually gives specific suggestions on how to respond to statements when you happen to be an passive bystander, such as, really, what did you just say? Dr. X is so capable. I'm really looking forward to seeing her in this role. I have 3 young children and no one ever says this to me. That's a very personal question. Let's change the subject. We're not supposed to comment on people's appearance in the workplace. You never know how it's going to be perceived. And then speak to the woman afterwards if you witnessed something that was not right. And acknowledge that it was not right. I'm sorry he said that to you. It's not okay and it shouldn't happen. Don't use gender terminology. For example, in 2019, I noted that letters to the editor for resuscitation were addressed with, "Dear Sir." So I wrote a letter to the editor suggesting it was time to drop the "sir" because gendered language imposes a gender stereotype that associates men with, for example, the editor-in-chief position. And I said that while there's value in tradition, language evolves. Gender terminology is a language of exclusion. Non-binary, gender-neutral language is inclusive and free of stereotypes and biases. Other examples of this are chairman. Don't assume trainees don't experience gender bias or harassment. There is plentiful literature now indicating that men and women trainees are judged very differently, and that includes gendered expectations about their behavior and leadership qualities. To support trainees, speak up and direct them to resources. If you witness discrimination, abuse, or harassment, speak up. Beyond us helping women, there are things that women can do to help themselves. And this is not to imply that women are the fix to this. The fix is a cultural fix, which we all need to contribute to. But women can also do things on a daily basis to help themselves succeed. For example, get over the imposter syndrome. Speak up and contribute your opinion. Don't sit in a back seat, sit at the table. Find at least one mentor. Ask for sponsorship. Be direct. For example, can you recommend me for that conference? For example, can you invite me to review a paper? Learn how to negotiate, and there's formal negotiation training. It's okay to prioritize your family and say that you can't attend 6:30 or 7 a.m. meetings. Accept invitations when you can and solicit invitations. Be a good citizen, but don't offer to plan every party and buy every gift. Come up with a vision and values for your academic career and politely decline activities that don't fit. If interrupted, say, "I wasn't done speaking." Introduce yourself using your professional title and correct people when they don't use it. Women are much more likely to be addressed by their first name than men. In response to gendered comments, say, "I'm not comfortable with what you said." And to end, I want to quote Dr. Mae Jemison, who was an engineer, a physician, and the first woman in space. When people think about why it's important to have a diversity of talent in a field, they think of it as a nicety. It's not a nicety, it's a necessity because we get better solutions that benefit us and our patients and the community. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning from Seattle, and greetings to the organizers. Thank you very much on behalf of the Society for Neurosciences and Anesthesiology and Critical Care for inviting us to participate in this very important event. I want to thank you all for joining today, and I also want to thank everyone for putting together this important group and to start these important conversations. What I'm going to do today is talk about the program that Society for Neurosciences and Anesthesiology has put together. We call it the WINNER program, Women in Neuroanesthesiology and Neuroscience Education and Research. And what I want to do is basically talk about how this program celebrates the exceptional leaders in our specialty and creates a path for mentoring the next generation. Before I start that, I want to give you a brief outline of our society. So the Society for Neuroscience in Anesthesiology and Critical Care is about a 47-year-old society. Here you see the pictures of some of the founding leaders of our society, and among them is Dr. Jane Majatsko, one of our earlier presidents. On the right side, you see the agenda for the first annual meeting back in 1974. The mission of SNAC is to advance the art and science of the care of neurologically impaired patients through education, training, and research in perioperative neurosciences. At the bottom here, you see a snapshot of our website, and there are quite a few resources available there, not only for COVID, but also for education and research in general. Like any other professional society, SNAC hosts an annual meeting, which is very well attended. We also host and participate in a variety of panels and workshops in collaborations with other societies. We create and work on guidelines and consensus statements. We are heavily involved in SNAC on education side of things. We have recently started the process of accreditation of neuroanesthesiology fellowships. We've been involved in curricular guidelines and developing standards for education. The Society does give out research grants, travel awards, and recognitions for accomplishments in various domains. There is a significant emphasis on trainee engagement and mentorship. And obviously, inclusivity and diversity is a core value for SNAC. Our members come from a number of countries across the world. So SNAC is very global and international. As you can see, these are the countries prominently represented in our organization. Now, we at SNAC have been extremely lucky to have been led by some of the exceptional women in neuroanesthesiology and neuroscience. On the slide here, you see the images of Dr. Jane Majetsko, Dr. Philippa Neufeld, Patricia Petroza, Dr. Stella Tomasino, and more recently, Drs. Karen Domino, Dr. Monica Vavilella, Dr. Deb Cully, and Dr. Christine Engelhardt. We've been extremely lucky to have been led by these exceptional women leaders. Now, that said, this slide, I'm sure, is not surprising to any of you. We're all aware of the fact that this is a problem globally, that even though at the level of entrance to med school, there's an equipoise between men and women, there are actually fewer women who pursue anesthesia training. But what's really more concerning is that at the level of full professors, department chairs, and board members of academic societies, there are actually very few women represented at that level. And that's what's really concerning. Essentially, women in anesthesiology are disproportionately represented in leadership roles. And this is true not just for professional societies, but also for departments. And importantly, this is despite the fact that several women have made substantial contributions in advancing our field in several ways. So there's a huge gender gap that exists, and it's really critical that a strategic approach be taken in order to close this gap. Now, reflecting on our own organization, SNAC, and women in neuroanesthesiology, we are really proud to celebrate our women leaders. But at the same time, we think it's really critical to ensure that there's a pathway for more women to continue to reach the same heights that our previous leaders have. And to this end, SNAC is committed to ensuring and promoting gender equality at all levels. And that's what led to the creation of the WINNER program, Women in Neuroanesthesiology and Neuroscience Education and Research Program. Just a couple of years ago, it was launched at our annual meeting in the year 2018. So as you can imagine, the program is at a very early stage, in fact, in its infancy right now. But the goal is to celebrate the successful women in our specialty, and at the same time, create a program to support, mentor, and to sponsor both early as well as mid-career women faculty in our specialty. Here's the mission of the WINNER program. It is to formally recognize the contribution of women in SNAC to the advancement of neuroanesthesiology and neuroscience, and at the same time to implement strategies to develop future women leaders. So to be more specific, what the WINNER program entails, first of all, is this WINNER Academy of Mentors. This essentially is an academy of exceptionally successful, experienced women who have essentially been leaders in our subspecialty. And they're not only currently active in practice, but they're also willing and available to provide mentorship to other early and mid-career women at all institutions. As you all know, not having enough role models and resources at local level is often a barrier for several women. So what this allows is access to these established role models to women who may not be fortunate enough to have similar leaders locally. At the same time, we recognize that it's important to support younger women to make sure they continue to advance in their careers. And to this end, we have instituted what we call the Winner Abstract Award. This award is basically to recognize the best scientific abstract among the first-time female poster presenters at our annual meeting. You can see here pictures. On the top is the first winner of this award, Dr. Shu Li, who's a neuroanesthesiologist from China. And at the bottom is Dr. Neudecker from Germany. What this award entails is not just a recognition, but also a complimentary one-year membership of the society, as well as a complimentary registration for the next year's annual meeting, so they can come back and present another abstract at a later stage. And then very importantly, the program connects them to one of the mentors in the academy. So for example, Dr. Shu Li, who's currently based in China, is being mentored by Dr. Jeb Cully, who's at Brigham in Boston. And I think that's really very powerful. Now, beyond this, we actually want to be able to pair every first-time female attendee at our annual meeting with a senior mentor. But obviously, this is not something we have done. We hope to accomplish this in the near future. But SNAC is committed to ensuring appropriate representation of women as both speakers as well as faculty in the annual meeting. This is something that we diligently do. We have committed to having a regular session at our annual meeting focused on the theme of winner. We are now committed to creating opportunity for women to meet and to network during the annual meeting, because this has been recognized as an important way to get to know other people and to network and move forward. And we have also committed to covering a regular winner segment in our newsletter, where we focus on women in all stages of careers who are members of our society and are doing great work in neuroanesthesia and neuroscience. But we do clearly recognize this is only a beginning. There's a long way ahead of us. A lot of work needs to be done. The winner program needs to develop further and needs to evolve over time. And we are very, we're prepared to do all that needs to be done. Most importantly, we still need to define the outcomes that will be used to measure the impact of this program. But SNAC is definitely committed to supporting this topic and to continue to develop a line of women leaders in future. We are certainly committed to closing the gender gap as we advance perioperative neuroscience. Now, obviously, this work requires a lot of insight, a lot of commitment, and I'm really proud to work with this wonderful group of women leaders of our society. Dr. Anise Koner, Dr. Shobana Rajan, Dr. Angel Third, Dr. Lauren Burkow, Dr. Alana Flaxman, Dr. Linda Aglio, Dr. Chananet Basensathan, and Dr. Laurel Moore. I have to say, working on this program, I've personally learned a lot from all these colleagues about the importance of this topic. And before I finish, I do want to say that for a very important topic like this, it's really critical that men become equal partners in fixing this gender gap. Men do have a very important role to play here, and I'm really proud to be a part of an executive team of our society, where my friends Dr. Jeff Pasternak and Dr. Rafi Vitzian were very helpful in launching this program. And that's all I have to share with you at this point. Thank you very much again on behalf of SNAC, and we look forward to more opportunities to working together with everyone and fixing the gender gap in medicine. Thank you very much.
We're running a little behind, so we only have time for one question. So I have one for Dr. Mehta, and it was a question asking a little more information about the imposter syndrome. So if you could briefly give an answer. And I'll just also point out that we've had a lot of good comments and questions that we're going to try to respond to on the website and a blog. So I'll mention that again at the very end. Dr. Mehta?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me. And I think I went overtime with my talk, and I appreciate the great questions. And this imposter syndrome is something that I did reply to it, that I still struggle with, even after 20 years in critical care medicine, even after being promoted to professor of medicine based on my accomplishments. And there's no easy answer to that question, but I think it relies on all of us, men and women, bolstering each other. And I know plenty of men that suffer from imposter syndrome as well, and reminding each other that we have been invited to participate in a certain activity, or we have achieved what we have because we are capable and competent and smart people. So I don't. Some of us can find it intrinsically in ourselves to overcome this imposter syndrome, but I just think it requires a lot of encouragement and support from the people around us, and not forgetting to remind our colleagues, our friends, that that was a great talk. I really enjoyed it, such as all these talks I've heard today. I wish it was all coming from an intrinsic place, but it unfortunately, we're not at that point.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just have a few last comments before we close. First of all, this is the executive committee of iWIN. As you can see, it's women from around the world: Diane Stevens from Australia, Catherine Maitland from Africa, Alison Fox-Robichaud from Canada, Francesca Rubalata from Europe and the UK, Flavia Machado from South America, and myself from the US. And I just want to say on behalf of the executive committee that we need to acknowledge the efforts of a very eager and enthusiastic group of people. And Artie Sarwal. So we've learned a lot, and we'll have fewer challenges, I think, on the next time around. So the last slide I just want to share is to remind you that we are hopeful that we will have a face-to-face iWIN meeting next year in June of 2021 in Catania, Italy. We are also interested in having more participation. So hopefully some of the attendees today, if you're interested, please email us with your interest, whether it be communication, social media, education, so that we can try to get you involved in some of our activities. You've seen the website there, and as I mentioned, a lot of the questions and comments that we had during this webinar will be posted in the blog. And you've also given us a lot of good information and ideas for future webinars. Although the live streaming did not work, we will have these video presentations up on the webinar, and we will notify attendees so that some that weren't able to make it today can review those. And just a reminder that you will be receiving a survey so that we can again ask for your thoughts and comments to help guide us in the future. And I just want to again say thanks to all of the societies that have supported the iWIN effort, and not only for this webinar, but with our activities for the past year. So I would also like to say thank you to all the speakers and moderators today, and to the attendees for your excellent participation.